The Uncharted franchise is a remarkable series, one that in many ways has defined the trajectory of modern Naughty Dog and modern PlayStation. You don't have The Last of Us without the Uncharted games that allowed Naughty Dog to shape their narrative linear action chops and evolve their realistic graphics. And you also don't have many of the successful third-person over-the-shoulder action games that have become synonymous with PlayStation without Uncharted to blaze the trail. Of course, this series is great in its own right, and so the thought of more Uncharted should be exciting for many. But Uncharted 4 was subtitled A Thief's End for a reason. Naughty Dog intended this entry to give Nathan Drake one last adventure and a chance to rest. And in this game, they paid homage to Crash Bandicoot, another successful franchise in Naughty Dog's past that they ultimately ended up moving on from. I remember all the speculation leading up to the release of this game as to whether Nathan Drake would die. And although that didn't actually happen, based on the ending, it did always seem likely that we may not get to play as him again. But the door was still open for a new title, perhaps with a new character, especially with The Lost Legacy proving that it can be done. But recently, Neil Druckmann gave an interview and explained that Naughty Dog has moved on from the Uncharted series, and this has led many to conclude that now Uncharted may be dead. But I don't know if that's totally true. Dr. Pooplove here, and today I want to answer the question, is this the end of Uncharted? And if you want more Uncharted coverage, then hit that like button so we can spread the poop love all around the world. But let's get right into it. And the first thing we do know is that there have, at the very least, been attempts to make new Uncharted entries. From Jason Schreier's reporting in Bloomberg, we know that the Visual Arts Service Group had initially planned to remake Uncharted Drake's Fortune, before eventually scrapping that idea in order to make The Last of Us Part 1 remake. We also found out in that same article that Sony Bend was working on a new Uncharted game before they actually asked to be taken off the project. We also know that Sony Bend's Jeff Ross disclosed that he had an idea for a Sully prequel. Seems though that all these ideas and projects were scrapped, but at least it shows that there have been some attempts to resurrect the series. But in addition to this, we have to consider the Uncharted movie and Sony's cross-media strategy. Whether you thought the movie was good or not, it was financially successful, and it did allude in the ending that another movie may happen. With that in mind, Sony will likely want to have another video game out in time for the eventual release of the film so that they can have that sweet, sweet synergy. But even more recently, we can look at job postings for clues that Uncharted is still alive. Last year, a new hire at Naughty Dog, who actually happens to be a real descendant of Sir Francis Drake, was brought on board. And her LinkedIn profile had an interesting quote that says that she was joining Naughty Dog to continue the legacy of Uncharted. Even more recently, 2 additional Sony job postings were put out for a newly reforming visual arts service group that will be working with Naughty Dog to continue a beloved franchise. While this franchise could be a Jak remake or Jak 4, or even The Last of Us 3, I do think that Uncharted is the more likely beloved franchise being referenced here. For one, I think the demand for Jak is quite a bit lower, although I would love a new Jak game, but I also just don't know how much Naughty Dog would be needed in order for a new studio to take on a new Jak game. On the other hand, The Last of Us is far too special, I think, for Naughty Dog to give up total control just yet. Even though Neil Druckmann did say that The Last of Us is on the table, but I mean, come on, really? Uncharted, therefore, makes the most sense, especially with all the prior information I discussed. And that's not even mentioning the recent leak from viewer Anon, who has been notable in the past for getting things right, and he said that an Uncharted reboot is in the works. But how does this jive with Neil Druckmann's comments? Well, he states that Naughty Dog has moved on, but not necessarily Sony. These job postings point to the bulk of the work being performed at this new studio. Of course, they may need some Naughty Dog support to guide the way and give a little bit of direction, but the Uncharted formula is already fairly established, and the Nathan Drake arc is probably done, and thus it seems more likely that this franchise can be largely trusted in another studio's hands with their own story to tell within this world. And I do hope that this is the case, because I love Uncharted, and I do want to see it continue. allowing us to explore more lost cities and hopefully include a new Uncharted multiplayer. But how could they continue a series in a way that actually makes sense? Well, this video right here goes over the possible angles that a new Uncharted story could take, so you should check that out. But otherwise, so long, Pooper Troopers.